Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It was years in the making, and tonight the centerpiece of Chula Vista's Bayfront redevelopment project is now open. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. And that project includes parks, open space, and a huge new hotel and convention center. And that is where KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen joins us live. Alex.
Yeah, Maya, moments ago they just held a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and right now people are partying. The festivities are for invited guests. Tomorrow is when it's open to the public, and as you said, this moment was years in the making. The chairs are laid out by the pool. The lazy river and slides are ready, and martini glasses polished and hung at the long-awaited $1.3 billion Gaylord Pacific.
One of the most highly anticipated events in the hospitality industry.
That anticipation, not just here, but nationwide. This is the 6th resort for Gaylord Hotels, and their largest yet. Gaylord Pacific Marketing and PR Director Pete Borum says guests can expect a larger-than-life experience.
Whatever you think of when you think of a hotel, this is bigger, it's bolder, it has a lot more interesting components to it.
Including 1,600 rooms, 12 bars and restaurants, and a 4.25-acre water park with a view of San Diego Bay.
It is going to be the town center for this community.
But getting here was a challenge. Plans to revitalize the Chula Vista Bayfront started in 2002. The California Coastal Commission approved the master plan in 2012.
COVID, inflation, interest rate rise, etc.
And the groundbreaking happened in 2022. Ira Mitzner is the CEO of redevelopment and Gaylord Pacific Managing Partners.
Dad wants to come with his son to go see a soccer or basketball game. They're going to come to our sports bar. Mom and daughter are going to come and have a spa day here.
The Gaylord Pacific is expected to be an economic development catalyst for the empty lots next door. The resort is already employing more than 800 people and expects to hire more than 1,600 when it's all said and done. Now back to you live. Back here live. The resort is expected to generate about $475 million in economic development for the city. Now, this is part of a bigger redevelopment plan that includes more parks, more restaurants, even more hotel. For now, live at the Chula Vista Bayfront, I'm Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
I'm Ariella Scalise, and as we look ahead, not too bad tonight. We'll call it mostly cloudy with temperatures down into the upper 50s. Coming up tonight, we stay dry and warmer through Friday, but a cooler, cloudier, windy weekend on the way with some areas of precipitation, and then we warm right back up next week.
The Supreme Court heard oral arguments about the enforcement of President Donald Trump's birthright citizenship executive order today. As Laura Aguirre explains, the majority of conservative courts seems open to limiting nationwide injunctions, but is wary of the birthright citizenship issue.
The Trump administration wants the Supreme Court to determine if lower court judges have the authority to interfere with or ban presidential executive orders, pushing back against 3 such lower court rulings that have stalled President Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship in the U.S.
The original meaning of the citizenship clause extended citizenship to the children of former slaves, not to people who are unlawfully or temporarily present in the United States.
We said after the Civil War we were never again going to debate whether a child born on U.S. soil is in fact an American citizen.
The administration frames its argument as a modest effort to limit the ability of lower courts to issue universal injunctions. But critics say a ruling in the administration's favor in this case could allow it to, in essence, overturn the 14th Amendment.
If we take that away, then we have babies born in this country with no attachment to any country.
Some of the key points being engaged by both liberal and conservative justices today, allowing Trump's executive order to stand could lead to requiring individuals to file their own lawsuits to protect their citizenship rights, and the possibility that birthright citizenship would only be upheld on a state-by-state basis.
Let's just say Colorado brings a case like the one we did here, but let's say Idaho doesn't. What happens if you're born in Idaho? You don't get the benefit of the ruling. You're not a citizen, but what if you move to Colorado? Do you become one?
We're standing up not only from a moral place, but also because we believe in the rule of law and what it has been in this context for over 150 years.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
As the Trump administration continues its mass deportation campaign, immigration lawyers say asylum seekers are increasingly being denied due process. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis has the story of one disabled man in a San Diego area detention center.
A deaf and mute Mongolian man has spent more than 80 days at the Otay Mesa Detention Center. His sister, a U.S. citizen, is willing to sponsor him, but the federal government is trying to deport him. Andrea Montavon McKillop is the man's immigration lawyer. She says this case is an example of how President Donald Trump's executive orders have eliminated due process protections. She says her client crossed the border at San Diego in February and immediately turned himself in to Border Patrol agents.
He gave them a letter that was written in Mongolian and translated into English, and they refused to accept it. They refused to even look at it. And that letter explained that he feared returning to Mongolia and wanted to apply for asylum.
KPBS agreed to refer to him by his nickname Bay due to fears that disclosing his identity would jeopardize his case. The Border Patrol handed Bay over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, who took him to the privately run detention center in Otay Mesa. Bay was placed in a fast-track deportation process called expedited removal. Normally, under expedited removal, people who express fear of returning home are given a screening with a trained asylum officer. If they establish credible fear, they get to see an immigration judge. Trump's executive order removed that screening process. Instead, Bay went through a different assessment without his lawyer present.
The most he could do was write on a piece of paper Mongolia and then use body language to indicate that he's afraid. Okay, that's all he could do.
Montavon McKillop believes that the ICE interpreter used American Sign Language, not Mongolian Sign Language. Bay couldn't understand most of the interpreter's signs.
So he's looking at a sign language interpreter through a screen who he can barely understand. I mean, he understands maybe a few signs here and there.
Yet, the officer determined that Bay was not in danger back home, putting him at risk of being deported.
I think it's a great example of how immigrants are receiving no due process. I mean, you're interviewed in a language you don't understand by someone who works for DHS as a DHS employee. You're not taken in front of a judge. You don't have anybody neutral or unbiased who's looking at your case.
The executive order that ICE is using to justify this treatment is called Guaranteeing the State's Protection Against Invasion. It portrays immigrants without legal status as a public safety risk. Montavon McKillop says Bay is not a criminal, and there is extensive evidence for him being persecuted in Mongolia.
Because of his disability, he was seen by others in the community as defective, as less than human, and he was beaten severely on multiple occasions by bad actors. He reported them to the police. The police did nothing. These people were never arrested. In one case in 2020, he ended up with a traumatic brain injury. On another occasion, he had bones broken. So there's no protection for him.
KPBS confirmed that Bay is currently in a private detention center run by the company Core Civic. Montavon McKillop says he's been there 80 days. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment. According to a 2024 budget analysis, it costs taxpayers, on average, $217 a day to detain someone in San Diego. That's more than $17,000 of taxpayer money spent keeping Bay detained. His sister, Bima, is willing to house him for free.
Yeah, I have a room ready for him, and then I have nice townhome in Virginia.
Like Bay, Bima asked KPBS not to share her full name. Bima says she's afraid of speaking out, but feels that it's important for other people to hear her brother's story. All she wants is for him to have a fair shot at humanitarian protection.
Give him a chance, to tell his story. So we are asking is fairness on his part.
Bima says her brother feels completely alone in the detention center, mostly because he's unable to communicate with anyone from staff, medical workers, or other detainees.
It's not just that he's been detained, but it's that he's completely cut off from understanding or participating in what's happening to him. And that's what breaks my heart.
Earlier this week, Montalvan McKillop filed a motion to prevent Bay's deportation. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
As the Trump administration and Republican lawmakers plow ahead with moves on immigration, trade and environmental policy, officials in Imperial County are taking a cautious tone. KPBS Imperial Valley reporter Corey Suzuki says they see both benefits and risks.
Imperial County officials are optimistic about some of President Trump's actions, including on natural resources. The White House says it wants to increase the country's domestic supply of critical minerals, which local officials hope could mean a new focus on the Imperial Valley's underground lithium reserves. On Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors met with lobbyists from Paragon Governmental Relations, the firm that pushes the county's priorities in Washington. Hassan Sarsour is with Paragon.
There's a lot of interest there. We're very excited about that interest.
On the other hand, Republican members of Congress have planned sweeping cuts to programs like Medicaid, the nation's low-cost health care plan. More than half of Imperial County residents get their insurance through the program. Paragon lobbyist Joe Cron says they've made it a priority to push back on these cuts.
We are very aggressively lobbying on this issue. I know we're going to talk about it when the board members are out here in a couple weeks.
Supervisors also requested more information on whether Trump's efforts to harden the border are reducing cross-border traffic and stifling sales tax revenue. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
The latest consumer price index data was released this week. It showed inflation slowed to its lowest annual rate in more than 4 years. Jen Sullivan breaks down what these numbers mean for your wallet.
When the temperatures rise, so does spending. Typically, Americans shell out more money during the summer months, and the latest consumer price index data released this week is good news for consumers ahead of the start of summer.
CPI, or Consumer Price Index, is important because it's going to monitor the changes in prices month over month.
Annual inflation cooled to 2.3% in April, and overall prices went up by only 0.2% from the month before.
This was within the range of expectations, but on the lower end.
The good news is overall prices for food, gas, and air travel are down. Those high egg prices we've been seeing have finally cracked. Egg prices dipped more than 12% last month. The bad news is shelter costs are up, which measures how much we spend on housing, and that accounts for a large portion of families' budgets.
That's one of the biggest costs that people have. Whether they're renting or whether they're owning, the cost that you have month to month, is going to impact how much other money you have to put towards other resources.
The other concern for consumers, financial analysts like Stephen Cates worry President Donald Trump's tariffs on foreign imports could cause prices to rise as we get closer to summer.
There's a lot of businesses that still have pre-tariff inventories. And as those dwindle, they will be forced to import more items. And if those are at higher costs, they may pass those costs on to consumers.
With trade talks rapidly changing, it means uncertainty for prices in the coming months. For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
The federal government agencies that fund and regulate drug discoveries this year announced a broad plan to move away from performing testing on animals for drug safety and efficacy. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge explores what this means for science and the steps San Diego scientists have already taken.
In a lab at the UC San Diego School of Medicine, we see a video of a human lung with a form of fibrosis, shown here in red. But this isn't really a lung. It's a miniature model of a lung made from human stem cells. It's called an organoid.
We now have a way to screen the drugs on this to reverse this exact condition, because it has been determined that without these cells, you cannot fibrose a lung. You cannot scar a lung.
Pradipta Ghosh is a professor of cellular medicine at UCSD who is dedicated to improving drug discovery by testing with human tissue. Ghosh says the problem with animal trials and the current system of drug approval is pretty clear.
We have a report card that we can't really ignore, can we? Our report card says we get it 9 out of 10 times wrong. That is a drug, at least.
Yes, about 90% of drugs under development fail in human clinical trials, the final stage of the approval process. Testing a new drug from end to end usually takes a decade and can cost more than $1 billion, whether it's eventually approved or not. And she says the shortcomings of animal testing is one problem. You see, people are not mice.
And we have evolved differently. We know our immune systems are vastly different.
The news of changing policies on drug trials were announced by the Food and Drug Administration and the National Institutes of Health last month.
We announced a dramatic reduction in animal testing at NIH and FDA.
The NIH announced it will create a new office to develop the use of non-animal approaches. Its director said, quote, "This human-based approach will accelerate innovation, improve healthcare outcomes, and mark a critical step forward for science." Pradipta Ghosh says she favors a tiered approach to drug development that includes organoid testing and computational analysis. But adopting new human-based forms of testing presents some challenges.
Cost is high. Skills, knowledge, limited to a few labs still in the world.
And this is all happening at a time when the Trump administration is proposing dramatic cuts, perhaps more than 40%, to the budget of the National Institutes of Health. To Ghosh, that's a problem.
How do you invest in something that is requires more skills, requires more resources, requires more infrastructure? Oh, and by the way, in the backdrop of less funding, that could be a little difficult task.
Some people still defend animal testing. The National Association of Biomedical Research said computational models and organoids are still, quote, not capable of fully replicating the intricacies of living systems. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
The next time you're out for a walk around our county, you might want to watch where you step. Sidewalk contractors over the decades have left their marks for future generations to see. And as Ken Kramer shows us, those sidewalk stamps can tell us a lot about San Diego.
Do you see them, especially on older sidewalks? They tell you who poured the concrete and sometimes the year. Well, we put the question on our Facebook page. Show us, what do you have in your neighborhood? And we got dozens of pictures and stories. Bill Hill found this in Little Italy, where Joseph Kelly set the cement in 1904. One of the letters got kind of sideways, but it says 964 5th, where Mr. Kelly had his offices in what would have been back then the exciting new Granger building, still there today. In Point Loma, Walter Trepti, what a name, was a huge figure in the development of San Diego and some of its most exquisite buildings, from the gas lamp to Balboa Park and beyond. His dad was a carpenter who is said to have worked on the ceiling at the Crown Room at the Hotel Del, built, by the way, without using a single nail. Samantha Cavett found this one at the corner of Boundary and Maple. It's from April of 1930, and the stamp says Griffith Company. Griffith was and still is a large contractor responsible for streets, highways, and even airport runways up and down the state of California. Their name shows up on sidewalks all around the city. Sue Alamand found this one on C Street between 27th and 28th, and also one from Ole Swarstad, who lived nearby in Golden Hill. In North Park, Elaine Silos found hard evidence that F.W. Jack had a busy day in September of 1923. Susan Hunt Williams spotted this in Sherman Heights, and another little one from what I guess was November of 1910, but who or what was Otto? Brooks Wilson sent this. Look, contractor C.B. Sanders. Looks like he might have tried to write the date in by hand. What is it? Does it say 1955? Maybe. And can't forget a local contractor, Mr. Orville Ullman Miracle, who lived in Oceanside and had such a unique and curious name, he earned a mention in Ripley's Believe It or Not. Okay, Sean Shaw saw this at 25th and E in Golden Hill, but where the Folsom brothers really made an impression and where they were responsible for a lot of development was Pacific Beach. In La Jolla, David Truitt found where they preserved a bit of sidewalk on Girard Street from 1912. Roman numerals marked this Mission Hills sidewalk in September of 1922. Eric D. Hansen saw it there, and also, oops, this was probably meant to be 1912, or was it 1921? On Kettner at Juniper was once the San Diego Macaroni Factory, home of first-class macaroni and a classic sidewalk stamp. Thank you, Beth Valscalato. And from Stephen Marquez at Mississippi and Polk, December of 1926, the contractor left his signature, and so did a passing dog, forever immortalized concretely in our history about San Diego.
And Ken Kramer has a half hour of stories every week about San Diego, and you can see them Thursday nights at 8 o'clock right here on KPBS.
Well, some good news as we close out our week. We're tracking dry and warmer weather through Friday, but not great news as we head into the weekend. It's going to be cooler Saturday and Sunday with some areas of clouds, some wind, and even some precip that we'll be tracking. Next week, though, looks warmer, and we'll be tracking a shallow marine layer through early next week. Tonight, we will see some clouds back into Oceanside, San Diego, Chula Vista, with temperatures dropping into the low to mid to upper 50s. We make our way here towards Borrego Springs, 58, and Mount Laguna, honestly not too bad overnight, down to about 47 degrees. Hey, this is nice to see for our Friday, as we'll be dry. We'll be pretty pleasant with our temperatures, and it should be good to go for outdoor plans or travel across the region. But some changes here as we head into the weekend. We'll chat about those in a second. Let's talk temperatures tomorrow. Warm in Borrego Springs, 93 degrees. Mount Laguna at 59. We'll get up to 69 in Oceanside, 68 in San Diego, and Chula Vista, 67 degrees. But remember those headlines I talked about, a little bit cooler, wet, windy at times through the weekend. We'll track our next storm here as it makes its way further south. That'll start to send some showers a little bit further north across the state, even back into Nevada. We'll look at future rainfall here, and you'll see a little bit of precipitation making its way closer to Southern California in and around San Diego as we head into late this weekend and early next week. Let's take a look here at the forecast over the next few days along the coast, with a shower in spots on Saturday and then warming up as we head into next week. Our 5-day outlook further inland, there it is on Saturday with some showers. We'll keep clouds around on Sunday, but then see more sunshine as we head into the day on Monday and Tuesday as temperatures warm back up. If you got plans for the mountains, cooler on Friday, but those showers on Saturday with some clouds on Sunday, but drier and warmer Monday and Tuesday. And then we'll take a look into the deserts here, where at least the heat will be trimmed on Saturday with the showers into the 70s. For KPBS News, I'm Mariela Scalise.
A class at the Logan Heights Library is teaching students of all ages how to perform in a mariachi ensemble. KPBS education reporter Katie Anasta says it's giving a father and daughter a chance to fulfill a lifelong dream.
I love mariachi because it just comes from your soul, your heart.
Betty Chavarin grew up singing and playing piano. One day, her son's school sent an email about activities at the Logan Heights Library.
As I was scrolling through, I saw mariachi and adults were welcome. And so I was like, oh my God, Dad, you know, like I called them and I was like, they have this group, it's free. I was like, do you want to join? I don't know what to expect, but let's see what happens.
For her dad, Rosalio, it was a dream come true.
Yo, desde chico, mis deseos era tocar el mariachi y pues yo buscaba y buscaba a ver dónde podía encontrar un grupo que me enseñara a alguien a tocar la música del mariachi.
Now, thanks to the class put on by the nonprofit Via Musica, he's performing with a mariachi ensemble.
Soy como el viento que corre.
But no, I really treasure this time with my dad because obviously, you know, we won't be here forever. And so these are things I'm going to really hold dear to my heart.
Via Musica offers music classes at 5 libraries in San Diego. They survey each community about which instruments they'd like to learn. At the Logan Heights Library, it was violin and guitar.
5 or 6 years after we'd been here, we had enough students playing at a high enough level that they were really interested in doing something together. And I thought, well, a mariachi ensemble sounds like violins and guitars coming together and making music.
Classes are free and instruments are provided.
How your resonance is very natural and
Andrew Rodriguez teaches the mariachi class for all ages.
from little kids to older gentlemen and everything in between, both Mexican, Latino, and non. So it's the diversity that really makes it special.
Rosalio Chavarin says he looks to Rodriguez as a role model. He says the group makes him feel like his younger self.
Estoy feliz, estoy contento, porque yo estoy haciendo lo que yo quiero ya. De mis deseos eran tocar en mariachi y estar feliz ahí con todos mis compañeros.
The group will perform in their end of the quarter recital on Saturday at 5 p.m. at the City Heights Performance Annex. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
A lovely story from Katie there, and you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. I hope you have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.